Okay, this next lesson is called Let's Get Tall, Let's Get Small. And for that, we will also need our trusty ruler. Alright, now we've gone over what perspective is and how it works, but what can it do for you and how should you use it? You spent a lot of time learning perspective, now it's time for perspective to give back. Well, you'll notice I have a little boxy building, little Lego building, and I have my horizon line low down here and 1 point perspective vanishing point right over there, and I have drawn my building. Now, this is to show you exactly how you can achieve bigger or smaller sizes in your buildings and in your backgrounds, and how you can achieve different camera angles, whether you want to be very low to the ground looking up on a building or very high looking down on a building. Now, we're not going to go back into 3-point perspective on this. We're just looking right now from 1 and 2 point perspective, but you can still get pretty high without having to work out 3-point perspective. Now, right now I've just drawn this little building right here. It's a good distance away from us, the viewer, or the cameraman, or the director, however you wish to think of yourself. And my vanishing point is all the way over here. And you'll notice it's a very narrow angle of this little triangle. Your vanishing point always creates a little triangle between your building and the point. And that degree right there is very small. It's less than 45 degrees. So it's keeping it really narrow, and that is to demonstrate the fact that the narrower you go with your little lines here, the further away things are going to see. Now let's take a look at the same building, but with a much wider angle. Oh, this building is sneaking up on us. Oh my god, it's all up in our grills. Now the horizon is exactly the same place where it was on the last picture, and the vanishing point is exactly the same place where it was on the last picture. But I've widened the angle greatly on these two guiding lines right here, and that has brought the building much closer to us. What also helps is the fact that this bottom line has now moved further down from the horizon, and as I said in a previous video, the further down you bring the bottom on the horizon, the closer that the structure will be to you, the viewer. So you can see it's gotten much bigger and it's now sort of looming at us. Now, what I mentioned before in a video was when you want to show yourself getting higher. Right now we look like we're standing a little bit above the size of an ordinary human. Quite a bit actually, because we're looking down on this door. This door seems to be the door is below the horizon line, so we're much taller than we would be if we were simply standing on the street and looking at this building. If we wanted it to be a little bit closer to a normal human being standing and looking at this building, the door would not be below the horizon line. Now, I mentioned, like I said, that you should always move the horizon line to control whether or not you are high up in the air or low down on the ground. But that's a little bit confusing. Some people think that moving the horizon line up in the picture simply means that it will be better. So let's take a look here. You'll notice I moved the horizon line, but I don't seem to have moved. See, I'm still just slightly taller than this door. I'm not looking way down on the building. And that is because the amount of space from the horizon line to the bottom of the building is still very similar. No matter where you put the horizon line in the picture, actually doesn't make much of a difference unless you also compensate by moving the building down. So yes, raising the horizon line will help the composition of your picture, but your building is still going to look like you're looking at it from the very same angle unless you move the building down. Now, the more of your structure is underneath the horizon line, or straight little horizon line, the more the structure is underneath it, the more you are looking down on it. The more it's above it, the more you're looking up on it. So a really small person would be looking at a building that would maybe have the top of it going way off towards the top of the panel, and the very bottom of the building would just barely go below the horizon. Just barely, if that. You don't want it to sit straight on the horizon. That looks a little bit odd. It can sometimes wreck your composition. But if this was the building that we were looking at, and I drew the door in here, a little bit higher, obviously. Honk, you can hear the cars honking outside. What can I say? Sorry, I live in the city. Philly's not known for being quiet. You can see how we are already looking up at this building from a very small perspective. In fact, we are now smaller, much smaller than the door. Put in a little line of windows here. A little hastily drawn buildings. You can see how we're already looking at. And now this one, we're obviously looking down at it because the door is angling below, like that. So we want to have things overhead. We've got to angle up like that. So you see that that proves that even if you raise the horizon, you have to compensate by moving all the buildings downwards in order to give you a sort of bird's eye view. If you move the horizon down very far, like we did in our first picture, to the bottom of the page, and then decide to just go way up on this building, huge on this building. It's the edge of our building, and once again take it very just below the horizon line, just barely. Then we will be very tiny indeed, looking up at a very tall angled building. Woo! That's still a big door though. Huge about big doors. That's okay, we'll just add another gallery to the top. But you see how we're now looking upwards. So, in order to control your bird's eye view and your worm's eye view, I don't know why worm. Why a worm's eye view? Like, worms are really that preoccupied at looking up at buildings? No, why not like caterpillar eye view or mouse eye view? I like mouse eye view. I'll put a little mouse in here. He's like, I'll look at buildings. Maybe them buildings have cheese in them. Those are his feet. But yeah, so if you want to have someone looking up dramatically at a building, that building's bottom should just barely graze below the horizon line. If you want them looking down, you should move it very down towards the horizon. If you want them way up in the air, way up in the air, just way up looking across a whole gallery of buildings, then, see, I'm drawing over a picture, I'm sorry. Do you have a building like this, where this is the top of the building? You're still working in 1-point perspective. This isn't turning into 3-point perspective. Luckily for some of us. But if that's the top of the building inside of that X, then that is completely below the horizon. The more you go below the horizon, the higher you are. The more you stay above it, the lower you are. And it is really that simple.